Once upon a time, in a small cottage at the edge of a forest, lived a kind woman who longed for a child. She had no family of her own and felt very lonely. One day, she visited a wise old witch in the village and asked if there was any way she could have a child. The witch smiled and gave her a tiny seed, saying, "Plant this in a flower pot, water it with care, and your wish will come true." The woman hurried home and did exactly as she was told. She planted the seed in a beautiful pot and tended to it every day. Soon, a magnificent flower grew from the seed. It was the most beautiful flower the woman had ever seen, with soft petals that glowed in the sunlight. One day, as she admired the flower, the petals began to open, and to her amazement, inside was a tiny girl, no bigger than her thumb. The woman was overjoyed and named the tiny girl Thumbelina. Thumbelina was as delicate as the flower she came from, with golden hair that shimmered like sunlight and a voice as sweet as birdsong. She was so small that the woman made her a bed out of a walnut shell, lined with soft petals, and a blanket woven from the finest spider silk. Thumbelina and the woman were very happy together. Thumbelina loved to sing and dance, and she would spend her days playing in the garden, riding on the backs of butterflies, and talking to the flowers. The woman loved Thumbelina dearly and cared for her as if she were her own daughter. One night, as Thumbelina slept in her walnut shell bed, a large toad hopped into the house. The toad was amazed by Thumbelina's beauty and thought she would make a perfect bride for her son. Without a second thought, the toad scooped up the sleeping Thumbelina and carried her away to her muddy home by the river. When Thumbelina awoke, she was frightened to find herself in a strange place, surrounded by water and mud. The toad's son, who was as ugly as his mother, croaked loudly and tried to take Thumbelina's hand. But Thumbelina was so tiny and quick that she managed to slip away and jump onto a floating lily pad. The lily pad carried Thumbelina down the river, away from the toads, but her troubles were not over. As she floated along, a mayfly noticed her and, enchanted by her beauty, carried her off to his home in the trees. But the mayfly's friends teased him for choosing a bride who couldn't fly, and soon he left Thumbelina alone on a leaf. All alone in the great big world, Thumbelina was scared but determined to find her way back home. She journeyed through fields and forests, making friends with a kind fish who helped her along the river, and a beetle who, though briefly enamored with her, also left her alone after his friends made fun of her. As winter approached, Thumbelina found herself cold and hungry. She took refuge in the home of a kind field mouse, who shared her food and warm burrow. The field mouse was kind to Thumbelina, but she had plans to marry Thumbelina off to her friend, the mole, who lived in a dark, damp tunnel underground. Thumbelina didn't want to marry the mole, but she was so small and helpless that she felt she had no choice. The mole admired Thumbelina's beauty but was more interested in showing her the treasures he had collected in his tunnels than in making her happy. Thumbelina was unhappy in the dark, underground world, longing for the sunlight and flowers she loved. One day, as Thumbelina was preparing for her wedding to the mole, she found a swallow lying injured in one of the mole's tunnels. Thumbelina took pity on the poor bird and cared for him until he was well enough to fly again. The swallow was grateful and told Thumbelina that he would take her away from the dark tunnels and back to the world of light and flowers. As spring arrived, the swallow carried Thumbelina on his back and flew far away to a warm, beautiful land filled with flowers and sunshine. There, Thumbelina found a field of flowers that were as big as she was. In one of the flowers, she met a tiny prince, no bigger than her thumb, who was the ruler of all the flower people. The prince was struck by Thumbelina's beauty and kindness and asked her to be his queen. Thumbelina, who had finally found someone as small and gentle as herself, happily agreed. The prince gave Thumbelina a pair of delicate wings so she could fly from flower to flower with him. And so, Thumbelina became the queen of the flower people, living happily ever after in a land where she was never too small, but just the right size. And every spring, the swallow would visit her, reminding Thumbelina of the journey that led her to her true home. If you liked our video, please like and subscribe our channel.